Dimensions. Okay, so I'm going to open up this guy that I created in the previous video, and we're going to create some dimensions. All your dimensioning tools are up here in the Annotate tab. So have a look around for these things. So we have Dim Linear, that's for just straight lines, and all of these tools you should go through and just leave your cursor on them, read the descriptions, just like you did for everything under the Home tab for your drawing tools. So you can dimension angles and arc lengths. Here's the radius, dim radius. Most of these start with DIM. So there's dim diameter if you have a circle. So just kind of poke around under all of these dimensioning tools and see what there is. Mostly what you use is dim linear. Dim continue, this is kind of a nice one. If you have one style, it'll just keep doing the same style over and over for you. So poke around in all your tools in your Annotate tab. You also might want to go through and create an entire layer for just your dimensions. So if I add another layer here and call this my dimension layer, and it's just kind of nice to be able to turn on and off your dimensions. So create a layer for that. And then I'll go up here, set my layer to my dimension layer. Okay, let's start out with just a basic dim linear. So DIM linear, this is for just a straight line. Specify first extension line, origin, or select object. So I'm going to grab a corner and another corner, and it's going to tell me how long this line is. Now, as I look at this dimension, you can see some problems here. I've got too many significant figures. I've got arrows that are overlapping my title block. And you're going to really have to mess around with formatting the style here until you get something you like. I'm kind of changing my mind about the scale of this. I think I want to make my objects a little bit smaller to give me some more room. I'm going to go ahead and right-click, scroll down to Quick Properties, and Quick Properties will let me redo my scale. So instead of that weird scale, let's go ahead and try 1 to 4. So 0.25 instead. So that just popped my view base sizes down a little bit, and I can come over here in my title block as well and edit this text. So I want this text to now say scaled 1 to 4. And also, before you start adding dimensions, you're going to want to move around those orthographic views just to make sure they're kind of centered and everything's where you want it, because once you start adding text to this, it's going to be harder to move everything around. So just really make sure and think about where you're going to put all of those numbers and labels on everything. Okay, the next problem, we need to change our style. So remember when I put in that dim linear, we had too many significant figures, we had arrows that were poking out, and so I need to change my font size and everything. I'm going to start up the dim style command, D-I-M-S-T-Y-L-E, and that opens up this whole new menu. Instead of modifying the standard style, I'm going to actually create a whole new style that I'll be able to grab later on. So I'm going to say new. I'll give my new style a name. I'll just call it 1304 Dims. Okay, so it'll have a new name, and then it'll show up over here, and I can grab this as a style. Continue. So here is the settings for my lines. I can change the line color, the type of arrow, the size of my arrow, my text. Maybe I want to make my text a little bit smaller. So instead of 0.18, I'll say 0.15. Here's the fit. And this was trouble, right? This is where I had my arrows over here. So I'm going to say I want my text to always stay between my extension lines. And I want to get rid of my arrows if they don't fit in here. All of these little styles, as you click through them, you can see what that style is going to look like over here. So kind of click around on all of your different options and you get a sneak preview of what that's going to look like. You'll probably go back and forth setting your dim style up with those first few dimensions. Let's look at units. Precision. Okay, so we don't want 4 significant figures. I'm going to set this, let's see, should we do 2 or 3? We had, let's see, just 1.75 and 8.25, so we should be able to get away with just 2 significant figures on here. Okay, we'll leave it at that for now. You can also align the dimension with the line, or you can keep everything horizontal, and that's kind of just a personal preference of what you think will be the best. Later on, we'll do a whole unit on tolerances, and you can also add tolerance notes over here as well. But we'll mess around with that later. So just have a look around at all the different styles that you can use in here, and you can go back and modify this later. Okay, so I'm going to hit OK, and then make sure to select your style. See how we saved it, and now we have this new dimension style up here that we saved. Hit Set Current, and then Close. So we changed our dimension style. Let's try up that dim linear command again and see if anything has changed over here. Okay, so you can see the difference between what the style was before and what the style is now. Quite different. I'm going to go ahead and delete that previous dimension. Remember, you only want to dimension things in one view. So once I have labeled this height over here in this view, I don't need to label the same thing over here. That would clutter up the work area. Also, you're going to dimension things towards the center of your page, not over here in the margin. You want to keep the margins nice and clear, crisp and clean, and put all of your dimensions towards the center. Okay, now that I have dim linear started, I want my next numbers to be lined up with the previous ones. So instead of dim linear, I'm going to try out dim continue. You don't usually have to write the entire command. DIMCON, that's enough for it to know what you want. So I'm going to say dim continue, and it's going to just continue what I had here before. Okay, so here's my next height, and it will just continue up to the next line and the next line, and enter. So isn't that nice? All of my numbers are lined up with one another, and we have the whole side labeled. Okay, escape to get out of the command. Dim linear. What else do we need to label? We need to label the overall length of this guy. So let's put in a 1.75 here, and we can call dim continue for there too, and get the rest of him. Let's go ahead and try out some of the other commands. Now, if you have the height, you don't usually need the length of the slanted one, but just to show you what the dim aligned is. So here's the dim aligned command, and again, just hold your cursor over it so you can see a description. And let's try out this slanted surface. So that's what dim aligned looks like. And again, usually if you have the heights, you don't really need that guy. Also, don't dimension hidden lines. Find the feature as a solid line and dimension it to the solid line. How about dim ang? So dimension an angle somewhere. And again, for all of these, you're just going to read what this command line tells you to do. So dim, select arc, circle, line, and I'm going to just go ahead, I'll select the first line, and now I'm going to select the second line, and see that it'll show me the angle between those two lines. So that's a nice little feature. Okay, so you want to just walk through this thing and make sure each feature is dimensioned only once. So what have we not dimensioned yet? Let's see, we have the height of this guy, but we don't have the height of the center one. So I'll go ahead and say dim linear, and let's go from here to here. And just show that that is 4. So that'll get the center guy. And we should probably dimension the length of all of these guys. So there's one guy. If you see this little exclamation point, that means that this dimension is no longer connected to the orthographic view. And so right click on it, say reassociate, and you can just reconnect it over here. If it's still having trouble, sometimes it's easier just to delete it and recreate it. But that's what that little exclamation point means, is that it's not connected to the view. Okay, so play around with that. Remember, you don't want something cluttery. Ooh, it keeps wanting to disassociate it. And you'll have to mess around with the dim style a while. But the goal here is to make something that is just clear, not cluttered. And yeah, use one of the layers over here. Sometimes you use a lighter gray instead of a black for the dimension. But it's kind of nice that you can turn those off or on so that you don't have to see it if you don't want it. So go through all of the annotate tools and try out all of those dimensioning tricks.